discriminate in our country.
Our rights come from nature and God, not from government.
All God asks of you is faithfulness.
35 years of fighting for the family, standing for the church, laboring to return to a moral and biblically based culture.
This is the American Family Association at AFA Today.
And we are so glad that you're with us. Welcome to another edition of AFA Today from our New York studios. And as you can see, winter well on its way to the New York area. In fact, there was a light dusting of some snow last night in some of the outer suburban areas of New York City. That's not the case for a lot of people south of here. And I know that. I got taunted on Facebook this morning by people that are in Texas and Alabama and Mississippi and Florida, and they're all talking about how they're still wearing their flip-flops. And I just, if I could have, I would have wadded up a bunch of snow off the ground and thrown snowballs at them through the internet. But I couldn't figure out how to do that. So anyway, Kevin McCullough, I'm glad that you're with us here on AFA Today. The website, afatoday.com, takes you to our Facebook page, and we welcome your feedback and comments on it. Over the last number of days, I have been watching a story out of the city that I come to you from, because it is, I think, a microcosm of the larger issue of the amount of death that some in our elected class wishes to present to the world. And I'm a little bit amazed by this because we have younger generations now that as they are going into college one by one, we are seeing the fact that they are, because of new technology, 3D ultrasounds and other things, we are seeing that the hearts and minds of the younger generations are ones that are turning away from saying abortion on demand all the time is a just thing or a good thing or something that should even be legal. We've seen some headway in the state of Texas in the last few months as the courts have tried to get involved but been overruled. They've said at least women should have a minimum standard of safety, and that if you don't meet those minimum standards, you shouldn't be doing surgery on them. That's a pro-woman message that is safe for those women. But it also, as a byproduct, ends up saving tens of thousands of lives a year of the unborn children. We have seen so many different elements of this debate still kind of rage, even though the next generations that are up and coming are clearly predisposed against it. And I will admit, I have not seen something quite as dramatic as what I saw last Friday when I read the headline here on the radio that Bill de Blasio, the mayor-elect, wishes to do something that would make, without question, the city that he would be the steward of, the most bloodthirsty, the most death-riddled city in America when it comes to the lives of unborn children. And that's one of the reasons why, if you go to onenewsnow.com, you can see my newest piece titled simply, The Most Bloodthirsty Mayor Ever. But that's what I honestly believe that Bill de Blasio is aiming at as he begins to take the reins of New York City here in the days to come. And let me, for the sake of making sure that we're understanding the parameters of this, let me put this in a hypothetical situation. I want you to think about if you had a city in which there was someone that decided to line up 10 mothers against a brick wall, and no matter how many kids they each had, take one of their children and stand next to those mothers, standing next to them, kind of like you're going to take a picture, 10 moms and 10 kids. And then to have someone in cold blood walk up and put a bullet in the head of 4 of those children. And you see their bodies slump to the ground and they keel over dead. The mothers, everyone's watching, is horrified. And then everybody goes back to whatever business they had. My question is a simple one, and it's one that I think is worth pursuing. Would there not be an immense outcry, at least from the people in that city, not to mention the rest of the county or the state or the country that they were in, that if you had 10 mothers with their children lined up against the wall and you came up and you put a bullet in the head of 4 of those kids and then just went back to life just like it was normal, there would be great moral outcry. If it happened once, I believe there would be abject horror. There would be news coverage. There would be news vans pulling up, reporters on the site saying, "How can the and to protect it legally, to say this is a legal thing that we can do." Just to do it once, I think there would be horrific outcries. I think to do it once a year, there would be an entire movement of people marching on that city and marching on the legal authorities there and saying, "How dare you continue this practice? How dare you do this any further?" And people in the control room, our guest is trying to call through, so when the next line rings, please pick it up. So here's the thing. You have this horrific act carry itself out multiple times. And I think eventually you create such a moral outcry. These dead children slumped over in the alleyway of wherever. And you're telling me that a society could just go on about its business and live with it. Well, friends, we don't have a city that's lining up born children in doing this. What we have is a city in which 4 out of 10 pregnancies are ending in this manner. Now, when you think of the health and stability of a city, when you think of the ability for a city to perpetuate a population, to go forward, to think that every 4 out of every 10 pregnancies that are conceived end in this fashion. If you went back to the analogy of lining up the mothers with the children against the brick wall and putting a bullet in 4 of the 10 children's heads, and you said that happened once, there would be outcry. Once a year, there would be movement started. Once a month, you would have maybe people, starting to take things into their own hands. But once a day, every day? And yet, that is the reality in New York City today. Chris Slattery joins us. He is an icon in the pro-life movement, and he joins us from New York and is one of the people that has worked in this field the longest and the hardest. Chris, welcome. We're glad you're with us.
Thank you, Kevin.
When I talk about lining up mothers against a brick wall and kids 10 at a time and then putting a bullet in the heads of 4 of the children and society going on and acting like normal, that's not an entirely distant picture than what's going on in New York, is it?
Well, of course, those kind of comparisons will get you into trouble with the left. If you bring in the idea of using guns, that upsets them, of course. You might run afoul with their plans for gun control.
But in reality, if New York is a city that is butchering 4 out of every 10 children conceived in the womb, that is the exact picture of what's going on.
Absolutely. And, it's particularly bad in the minority community here in New York City. What's absolutely astonishing is the borough of Brooklyn, which, of course, is one of the largest counties, if not the largest county in America, with a 2.7 million population. The statistics show that amongst black women in Brooklyn, 70% abort their babies annually. 70% of black women abort their babies in Brooklyn, where there are close to 30 to 35,000 abortions in that one county per year, and predominantly from black women. So amongst some subsets, the numbers are far worse than 40%.
And given that, Chris, I feel like people may be hearing this for the first time and they may be going, there's no way that this can be as bad as what these two gentlemen are saying. You direct the EMC Frontline Pregnancy Centers. How did New York become the abortion capital of the world?
Well, we were the first major state to legalize abortion on demand in such a broad way back in 1970. Actually, it was a coalition of clergy and activists like Larry Leader and Dr. Bernard Nathanson that pushed the envelope using deception, lies, and tactics that were chronicled in the late Dr. Nathanson's early books.
Clergy were involved in the advance of abortion?
Right. Clergy consultation services, largely Protestant clergy in New York, made it a moral issue to advance abortion and using the tactic that there were tens of thousands of women that were dying from illegally performed abortions, which was a crock. It was made up. It was statistics that were pulled out of thin air by Nathanson and Larry Leader and others, and they just fanned the flames, claiming this is a holy cause. And they helped to fan the flames in Albany that led to the legalization back in 1970. And we became the abortion capital of the world. In the early 70s, we had close to 250,000 abortions.
Wow.
In 70, 71, 72, before the virtual legalization in
All 50
after
states.
Roe v. Wade
Right.
in January 22nd, 73.
So New York was doing abortions prior to Roe v. Wade becoming the law of the land.
There were probably 500,000 or 600,000 abortions done in New York City before Roe v. Wade.
We're speaking with Chris Slattery. He is the director of EMC Frontline Pregnancy Centers. And Chris, we've got a nationwide audience that accesses Kevin McCullough every day. I want you to tell them a little bit about how your group got founded and got started.
Well, we founded EMC when I came back to my faith. Been a fallen away Catholic and began a career in the advertising business in the late 70s. And when I came back to Christ, I looked at the social issues, discovered New York was the abortion capital, discovered there were abortion clinics right near where I lived in Midtown Manhattan. And I started counseling women in front of them, these places, and was astounded that you could actually talk women out of this on the street. And then eventually I got the idea, well, we've got to have places to send women to, and we established the first pregnancy center in Manhattan in the early 80s. And so we are now all over the city. And from 87, attorney generals and pro-board politicians have taken aim at us. I'm now facing my third sets of subpoenas by our third attorney general. The current one is named Eric Schneiderman.
Yeah, let's get into that in a second, Chris, because I want to give folks just a little bit of a better idea of what you're up against. But the long story short is, if there was ever a city in need of crisis pregnancy centers, because 4 out of every 10 pregnancies end in abortion in New York City, this is certainly the place where they need to be. Now, what has happened in the last couple of weeks, we will talk about, as the mayor-elect, Mr. de Blasio, has said his new goal is to go to a new level of oppression and war against the unborn child, and we'll discuss that with Chris Slattery next as we continue. EMCfrontline.org is Chris's website, and I hope that you will check that out. I'm Kevin McCullough. This is AFA Today on AFR Talk.